Welcome, moviegoers, living cartoons, and the Jim Crow era. This is episode 536 of an Unearthly podcast, streaming live on the 19th of April, 2025, and featuring Lux, written by Russell T. Davies, and starring Shuti Gatwa as the Doctor and Verada Sithu as Belinda Chandra. I am Bill Sylvia, the one in black, and I hate that I still cannot figure out the right amount of salt to put on a cheeseburger. With me are Alex Fireheart
Hello.
and Aaron Romeo Moonberg.
Hello.
How's everybody's week going?
Not too bad. Was kind of glad to have Friday off because it gave me a chance to sleep in because I was accidentally up like way later than I intended to be. Of course, the funny thing is, I didn't get a lot of sleep this morning, so it's almost kind of glad that I've got tomorrow off, even though I would have preferred to work tomorrow because it's Easter weekend. So, yesterday I think was double time and a half, or at the very least just double. Today was double because it's a Sunday. Sundays are always, and tomorrow is a public holiday, so that also would have been double if I'd worked that. So, as someone who primarily only works 4-hour shifts, about 8 hours worth of pay for 4 hours of work would have been great. 3 days in a row.
Cool. I mean, I always gobble up whatever I can get for overtime.
Yeah, basically aside from that, it's just been watching. Like, I don't even know how Geek Talk is going to go for me in the next month because I'm closing in on finishing campaign 3 of Critical Role. I've hit the triple digits, so I've got less than 20 episodes left. So depending on how I get through some of those, because I've basically been taking it like at least one episode at a time, if that. There've been some where I've just kind of split it in half because I got to it too late. But yeah, it's like hopefully there's enough time. Like I'm assuming, given that they're coming to Australia in June, they're probably not gonna start the 4th campaign for another like couple of months anyway, because there's usually a decent gap between. But hopefully with campaign 4 I'll actually keep up so I don't have to like go through the backlog like this, because that's usually what'll burn me out. I guarantee after I finish, they're doing like they're doing a side thing at the moment, but I'm like a shorter campaign in between at the moment, and I'm just like, will I go straight to that or will I just leave it sit for a bit and just like take a little bit of a break so I don't burn myself out like I tend to with this kind of stuff.
Looks like I haven't dove into the new Daredevil yet because I know that I'm just going to ignore all my responsibilities until I actually am caught up. So I'm like, I'm just going to wait until I have time to binge it rather than trying to stop myself from binging it.
Yeah. I'm having a hard time just finishing the new Reacher season, and that's actually a pretty decent season, but there's so much going on, and I've mostly been like cleaning house-ish, even though it still kind of feels like it's a mess playing with the cats. It just seems like I don't know where my time goes. and it feels like I'm not using it very wisely. So I'm a little kind of worried about that.
I feel that.
It's just like,
Yeah.
wait a second, what do you mean 3 hours just passed? Like, well, I guess I did all this stuff. I did like laundry and dishes and everything, but that couldn't have possibly taken me 3 hours.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, or I sit down like, oh, I just need a break for 15 minutes. And then 3 hours have passed. I'm like, wait a second, what? Um,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
just.
I also have had taken a few days that are just mostly like relaxing after some stressful deadlines, which basically meant sleeping till 4 p.m. and going to sleep at 4 a.m. Which isn't necessarily a good idea because I still have another 3 weeks of the semester left. But at least it means that I'm coming in. I'm not coming in with like stressed out head. I'm coming in with a clear head for the next few things I need to work
Mm.
but nothing exciting going on for me other than the news, which I'm not iterating here. All right. All right. Tonight, we have, of course, our, little channel update, birthdays and news, episode summary, which I believe it's my turn for this week. Um, we'll yeah, we should have time. We didn't last week, but especially now that we've had a real companion episode with her, we can kind of give our thoughts on Belinda, our episode review, final thoughts and ratings, and since the season is in full swing, we can go back to doing predictions with each podcast. So to start off, our update on the Twitch situation. So Twitch did uh, update to allow up to 100 hours of deletion at a time, which I didn't realize because I thought it was 100 videos at a time, and that wasn't working for me because 100 videos on this channel is about 175 hours of content. But once I realized that we could delete 100 hours at a time, I was actually able to catch up fairly quickly. So we now have a little bit of space. I can, make highlights normally. What this means for viewers is that I don't need, we had some delays because I had to download episodes instead of making them into highlights. And then, so our last couple podcasts ended up kind of being accordioned because of that. But now we should be back to our normal schedule, assuming I don't do something foolish like forget until Friday afternoon that I need to make a highlight or something. Well, we should be, making highlights normally on Twitch and exporting them on YouTube. At this point, I have to say, if you're using Twitch to see the backlog, thanks to the new Twitch policy, that's foolish and you need to go to YouTube. There's just nothing else around it. We just deleted about 700 to 800 hours worth of content from Twitch.
Yep.
Because that's the way Twitch is running things now.
Yeah. They can't afford to keep the backlog of videos anymore, and their excuse is that highlights don't generate any views, and that's kind of true. Like, I get far more views on my archive on YouTube than I do with the highlights on Twitch, but Twitch I was kind of using as a backup in case something happened to my YouTube account. And now I can't count on that, so I'm just going to be personally, I'm going to be downloading my videos and then maybe putting them up on other streaming platforms if I can. Like, I think BitChute is still around, but it's kind of an alt-right haven right now, so but it doesn't mean I won't
I know Matt
put
was
my stuff up
trying, I
there.
forget if it was Vimeo for a while. I don't know how that's been going.
I think Vimeo is kind of restrictive too in how much you can host there now without paying.
Gotcha.
And I think even with paying, I think you only get like maybe 100 gigs or something.
I believe it. The podcast site that I was trying to upload our stuff to for a while, I went back to be like, okay, let me try to get back on track with that. And they're like, oh well, now you need to have a paid account to have more than like whatever a number. Like basically, I already had way too much on there for a free account. So I'm like, okay, I'm not doing that. Like, this is not a revenue generating podcast. I'm not spending $100 on the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to share somewhere that is probably not getting any clicks anyway.
Yeah. Like, I would suggest putting
I
us
mean, one thing
on.
if it includes some sort of advertisement, but
Mm-hmm.
not like just for storage.
Yeah.
I would suggest we put ourselves up on Spotify or some similar service like that, just
I
to see if we
tried
can
that
do
and I was
audio.
bit confused. Like, I was having trouble finding a way to set it up properly. Like, there were a few paid services that seemed like they could do it, but I'm not
Mm.
familiar with that sort of setup to really know what I was doing, and I ended up not investing any more energy into it.
Okay.
But yeah, I would like to try that at some point. Anyway, moving on to Alex with the birthdays.
Yep. So, starting with the 13th of April, we have Peter Davison, aka the Fifth Doctor from seasons 19 to 21. Plus work for Big Finish since, has turned 74. On the 14th of April, we have Peter Capaldi, aka, oh my god, I forget how to say that name. the Roman name of the character he played before 12. Before 12.
Mm.
Uh,
I can't quite remember the name
Oh,
either.
Caecilius.
Caecilius, yeah, there you go.
Oh, I think I did. I did.
In
It actually does say Caecilius on the
and
script on the outline.
yeah, he played Caecilius in Fires of Pompeii, John Frobisher in Torchwood, Children of Earth, and the 12th Doctor from 2014 to 2017 turned 67.
That was 10 years ago. Over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my
Mhm.
god.
Hmm. Also on the 14th of April, we have Terrence Dicks, who was a script editor for Doctor Who between 68 and 74, and a writer until 83, plus other media. Also handled a lot of the Target novelizations, if I recall. Would
That's the
have
other
been,
media.
yeah, would have been 90, but died in 2019 at the age of 84. On the 15th of April, we have Maisie Williams, who played Ashilda, aka Lady Me, in Series 9, but better known to people outside of Doctor Who as Arya Stark in Game of Thrones, turned 28. On the 16th of April, we have Derek Sherwin, who was a story editor in Doctor Who from 68 to 69 and the producer for the War Games and Spearhead from Space. Would have been 89, but died in 2018 at the age of 82. On the 17th of April, we have David Bradley, played Solomon in Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. William Hartnell in An Adventure in Space and Time. And the latest version of the first Doctor in Twice Upon a Time and The Power of the Doctor, plus work for Big Finish, turned 83. Then we have a slew of people on the 18th of April. First, we have David
Yes,
Tennant.
we do.
First, we have David Tennant, who was the 10th and 14th Doctors from 2005 to 2010, and then again in 2023 for the 14th. Plus work for Big Finish, turned 54. And if we listed other things he was known for, we'd be here all day. As well on the 18th, we have Camille Kaduri, who played Jackie Tyler from 05 to 2010. Plus work for Big Finish, turned 60. Also on the 18th, we have Eric Roberts, who played the Master in the TV movie. We won't hold that against him. Plus work for Big Finish, and 69. And finally, also on the 18th, we have David Whittaker, who was the Doctor Who story editor from 63 to 64 and a writer until 1970. Would have been 97, but died in 1980 at the age of 51.
Maybe we should also have said that. Maybe we should also have added that he's the creator of the Dalek Emperor. I don't know if that counts as a unique creation or not.
It certainly advances the Daleks a bit. It advances their lore.
So happy birthday to Peter, Terrence, Maisie, Derek, David, Camille, Eric, and David. So 3 Davids,
one more Peter.
2 Peters. On a more somber note, an Unearthly podcast is sad to announce that first Doctor companion Jean Marsh, who played Joanna in The Crusade and Sarah Kingdom in The Daleks' Master Plan, plus work with Big Finish, has died at the age of 90 on the 13th of April. Prior to working on Doctor Who, Marsh studied a variety of performing arts as a child, was third Doctor John Pertwee's first wife, and played an android named Alicia in an episode of The Twilight Zone. She co-created the Emmy-winning period drama Upstairs, Downstairs, and appeared in films such as Return to Oz, Willow, and A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. So rest in peace, Jean, and condolences to friends and family.
One of my mom's favorite TV shows was Upstairs, Downstairs.
Yeah.
I know about that one, and I also know her as the villainess from Return to Oz, and I think she's Bad Morta in Willow, the evil sorceress.
I know the article said the villain in Return to Oz and in Willow. So
Oh, yep, I see it right
there. Not to mention, she also played Morgaine in Battlefield with the 7th Doctor.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Which I did forget about that. I think it was like, I feel like I remember it being a matter
she had
of like
3 different characters. Okay.
Like I feel like I recall, or maybe it's just people have compared it to, that maybe she got it from like someone seeing her performance in Willow and being like, "Oh, can you do that?" On Doctor Who.
All right, moving on to episode news. So, of course, we don't have the overnight ratings for Lux yet, but we do have the official ratings for the Robot Revolution, which is 2.0 million viewers. So that is lower than anything in the previous season, and with it being its unique time slot, the lowest in several years, possibly since the revival. There has been the ongoing discussion of whether the overnight ratings still measure what they used to, because a lot of people wait until the end of the season and binge it, or for whatever reason, watch it on streaming at a different time. So it's not, there's the idea of everybody watching it at the same time with their family is less and less a thing as the years go on. But also, it's probably not a great sign that it's still continuously dropping, even for a season finale. I mean, season premiere.
Which, depending on what because I'm assuming, is that like Disney Plus numbers, or is that? I'm assuming probably not, because Disney would probably be cagey about that.
Yeah, I think this is. I think this was just iPlayer and BBC One.
Because I was thinking, in hindsight, Disney are probably going to be cagey about the numbers unless it's doing well.
Disney puts out numbers for their stockholder report, so it's not as regular as the BBC One numbers.
Because I feel like
But yeah, this is UK specific. Like we don't have there's no such thing as a US channel anymore. But yeah,
right. Because I feel like I remember like while they didn't give numbers at all last year, they were like, yeah, it's doing really well. We're not going to tell you how well, but it's doing well.
Exactly. Yeah, they're like they're like it's one of our best shows on the day a new episode comes out in 10 countries. But they're not going to tell us how many people are actually watching it.
It's doing so well, we're not going to announce a third season yet.
Well, I mean, again, the idea is like, from what I understand, and I think it's come up before on the news that we've covered, is like the current deal runs out after war between the land and sea ends. So that's after this. So like effectively it's this season, then nothing, then the spin-off, then who knows? Like from what I feel like Disney themselves have said, we're waiting to see how it turns out, like what the reception is, what the ratings are like, viewing figures are like, before they decide to renew the deal effectively.
Also wondering, and this is something you can't really talk about yet, if they have more meta reasons for not announcing the next season yet. But we can't really talk about that until we talk about the plot of the episode.
I mean, it wouldn't really. It wouldn't surprise me if Disney were being very like, well, let's see actually how this goes on our platform first. Because the viewing numbers, even if the viewing numbers were great last season, they might completely, like, as Doctor Who has a habit to do, when a new Doctor comes through, they might start high and then plummet. So
I should also add at this point that they still do not have a permanent like Doctor Who or BBC button on Disney Plus, and
which
go ahead.
In hindsight, this might be exactly why. They might be like, we haven't got this secured for a long time, so we're not going to bother until we know we've locked this in for like a good couple of years maybe. And then they'll start doing that.
But also, like 16, like I watched the episode when it first dropped, and of course it was on the Disney Plus rotating banner then because it was literally had literally dropped within the past hour. Less than 18 hours later, I went to rewatch the episode, and it was not in the rotating banner. It was not showing up on suggested things to rewatch or to finish watching. I had to search for it to get the season back up. So they're almost like anti-promoting it. Like how is it? It's been out for less than 24 hours. It's allegedly a driver of viewership for your platform, but I have to search for it to find it to rewatch the episode.
Yeah, like I watched
not good marketing.
Yeah, I watched it a second time this morning at 10 a.m. and I was able to find it on the banner of rotating, new shows or the show just premiered a second season or whatever. And I logged in. I think it was about 9:30 when I got home. I logged in at 9:30, and Bill's right. There's no advertising for the second season of Doctor Who at all. It's not on the banner or anything like that.
You know what I think that is? The US viewing figures are low. That's what that says to me, because I went to Disney Plus right now. It's the first one that came up. So in Australia, the numbers are... So that says to me, the viewing numbers in Australia are high. The US numbers are weaker, so they're not promoting it as much.
Which is interesting because Disney said that the viewing numbers were high. At least for last season.
Fair, high in very specific countries is what that says to me.
The US was one of them.
Oh, well, yeah. At the very it would not shock me if they've dropped off in the US, maybe, or that they're just like I don't know. It's like it's either that or it's just some weird thing with how Disney Plus works in the US
I'm
compared to
also
elsewhere.
wondering if
But
it's.
yeah,
I'm also wondering because if I'm at least as of last time we talked about it, Hulu wasn't really in other countries, and most Hulu things were on Netflix
mm,
instead in other countries. And I'm
mm.
wondering if like a bunch of Saturday morning cartoons dropped on Hulu, after Doctor Who came out, and they just
Maybe.
pushed Doctor Who off the banner because AI runs
Mm,
everything and humans don't check anything anymore.
yeah,
And
I
that
do
could be the thing.
I do think there were like uh I remember this problem coming up previously, like when we covered last season, and I think I realized, oh no, it's there. It's just like further along in the rotation. So maybe it just happened to be a day where like a bunch of stuff got added all at once.
Well, they are advertising for Andor. There was actually 2 advertisements on the banner for Andor
Mm.
season 2, and they were separated by a bunch of other
Right.
announcements. And there's a new animated show for Star Wars as well. I can't
Mm.
remember. I think it's like Young Jedi Knights or
Mall.
something like that. No, not Maul, but
Oh, so
Young.
maybe multiples.
Yeah, it was a
Okay.
kids show. It was like
So they're too
Young.
busy advertising for stuff that's not out yet.
Yeah.
Fun.
Also,
All right.
we've got
Well,
my little brother is also asking, talking in chat too, and has asked us: does the panel think David Tennant was brought back to boost ratings?
um,
I would
David
assume
Tennant was
so.
specifically brought back because he and RTD were in a group chat and they thought it was a fun idea.
Mm.
I think they probably were able to convince the executives that this was a good idea because it would boost ratings. But I do not
Mm.
think it was. I think. I mean, granted, you can't assume everybody's telling the truth. Sometimes people do
Yeah.
things for the sake of money, and that they don't say it's for the sake of money. But I do
Mm.
think they were being honest when they said in interviews that it was just they thought it would be a fun idea, and that was the main
Mm.
reason why it was pitched in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Yeah. I
definitely
mean,
would not be shocked to hear that like the people, people at BBC and the people at Disney Plus were swayed by the ratings that would come with it.
yeah, like I mean, it we've joked about it before, but like I can specifically remember Randy joking that like David Tennant would probably show up for a sandwich at this point. Like if he's like, "Oh, I can be on the show again. Sweet. I'm there."
I
Like
mean, he's a
he's an
parent
easy
of
get.
I want to say 4 at this point, so maybe a sandwich wouldn't do the job.
Well, yeah, but like
A
point
sandwich
being
and
like
free childcare for an hour, maybe.
but yeah, like he's a fanboy of the show generally.
Yeah.
Like this was a dream job, so I'm not it's one of those things
Mhm.
of like, yeah, we're gonna like regardless of what they did for the 60th specials, he was gonna be there because
Mhm.
like he was the easy get. So it's one of those things where like thinking about it cynically, yes, I could see like the main reason that yeah, like as Bill said, like the main reason that Disney and BBC would have gone for it is yes, bank on that nostalgia, bring that guy back. But it's probably if it was purely a ratings grab, then Shooty wouldn't have debuted yet. They would have convinced David to be like, no, 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 you're gonna come back and you're gonna do these 2 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
If
Entire
it was
2
like a
seasons.
cynical, yeah, if it was like a ratings grab rather than just 3 specials.
I always thought it would be interesting if they do continue with David Tennant's like by generation, if he becomes something like the Valyard, where he becomes evil, like an evil version of himself.
Hmm.
I think that could be kind of fun.
I mean, he has done the Time Lord Victorious thing in Big Finish, so.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Speaking from a cynical meta perspective at that point is if I were an executive, I would see how everybody turned on like so looking example, Game of Thrones went from the most popular, most talked about thing in the world, and then Daenerys burned down a city, and then literally nobody had anything positive to say about the show for a decade after that. I would be very hesitant, as you know, if I worked for a company that made money off of David Tennant action figures, to do anything that would tarnish his doctor's reputation.
Hmm. I guess it'd be like if they did a Valiard thing to that end, you could, if you wanted it to be Tenet, it would more likely be the Metacrisis Doctor. Because the whole thing with Valiard was wanting to get more regenerations, and the Metacrisis Doctor has none. So,
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I could see them doing a Tenant and Gatwa versus other Tenant, because then that would
Mm.
still preserve the like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is still a popular doctor sort of thing.
Mm.
Well,
All right,
also,
moving on.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, also, yeah. But man, that would actually be really awesome. Having good David Tennant versus evil David Tennant along with Shooty Gatwa. That's what we need.
You know, if they're still doing multiverse stuff in the MCU, I mean, at least still planning on doing a lot of it, that would also be something that could be done. Like, imagine a good Purple Man.
Interesting.
All right. Moving on from episode news, we have some merchandise release news. Penguin Books has announced two new novels coming this summer. First off, we have Shirley Jackson and the Chaos Box by Kaylin Byron, which is, I'm pretty sure, the 15th Doctor and Belinda. When a strange signal echoes through time to the heart of the TARDIS, the Doctor follows it to the home of Shirley Jackson. But the strangeness deepens when they find a sinister figure sowing chaos and discord with the use of a glowing box. What is this, Loki? I don't know if Shirley Jackson is a name we're supposed to know or not.
Seemingly, the
It,
idea is yes, because the icons thing seems to be it's a matter of Doctor meets a historical figure.
yeah. So let me look this up then.
She was apparently an American writer known for horror and mystery.
Okay. She died in 65, so I'm guessing she was active over the 20 or so years before that.
I believe she wrote the House on Haunted Hill, right?
Oh, did she?
I'm seeing The Haunting of Hill House, at the very least.
Yep,
Yeah,
Haunting of
that's what
Hill
I meant.
House was her. Okay. Okay, yeah. So that's a mark that that's something I would recognize. Because I watched the what was it, 99 movie that seemed like the most realistic CGI at the time, and now is very much not that. Okay. So we're probably going to be seeing something that is believed that is going to be implied to have inspired either that story or another of her stories. That's a 12th of June release. And then we have Sarah Jane and the Fourth Doctor. Um, Sarah Jane doesn't know who she is anymore. She works as a secretary at an office, and her other coworker is secretly the Doctor, trying to restore Sarah's memories. But there's aliens out there eating people's memories. That's interesting. I know it could be a Big Finish audio, but a novel also works, and that is the 25th of August release. And then moving on from there, I think this may possibly have been mentioned as an upcoming thing at some point in a past podcast. But a recent release, this actually was released last week, but we did the news before this had been updated. Big Finish, Planet Crinoid, Nightfall. So this, I believe, is crinoids being grown on Earth, and Paul McGann, the Eighth Doctor, is there to stop it. Written by Jonathan Morris, Jonathan S. Powell, and Chris Chapman, starring Reese Shearsmith as Governor Robert Hoden and Paul McGann as the Doctor. Crinoids are from which episode is that? Mandragora or something else? Seeds of Doom. Okay. Which I think Seeds of Doom is one that we don't talk a lot about, so I remember a little bit, but not super much. And that is the end of our news. Anybody have any geek talk or anything? There's nothing listed, so I'm thinking not.
Not
no,
really.
not at the moment.
Oh, I guess since we've been kind of talking about it the whole time, sci-fi fantasy news. Yeah, we don't have this section a lot. We often don't have time for it, but Star Wars Celebration Japan is happening right now. There is a Darth Maul animated show coming out, so this seems like it would be like if you remember the Solo like end credit scene with Darth Maul in charge of the Underground. It seems like it's going to be that era of scoundrel story, underground stories, which is really interesting because we've seen the start of it, right? We've seen Clone Wars season 7. We've seen the end of it because we've literally seen him die in Rebels.
Again.
So this becomes a midquill for that. But I mean, there are at least a lot of like people who are really interested in that. I don't know how big that group is, or if it's a big enough group that this will have good ratings. As someone pointed out, anything that'll keep Sam Witwer employed. And then, Aaron, you were telling us about another animated show that you had seen some news about. Want to share some of that?
My brain is a sieve right now, so I don't even remember what I was telling you about.
Something about starfighters.
This is not Starfighter isn't an animated show. It's going to be live action, as far as I can tell.
Oh, okay. I thought you said. Oh, you were talking about something else that was animated, I guess.
Star Wars Ryan Gosling's Starfighter. Let me look it up here. I don't know anything about it really. I just know that it was announced. So, yeah, Starfighter. I don't know who's directing it or anything like that, so. It has nothing to do with the Starfighter games, I guess. Yeah.
I think
they
this
have an
is
official teaser
from the pitch that was going to be a movie directed by Patty Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much is left from the original pitch, but it was originally going to be about, assuming it came from the same start, it was going to be about Poe Dameron.
Oh yeah, it's coming in 2027. That is something I do know about. It takes place 5 years after Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I remember.
Because I was gonna say it'd be funny if it. It'd be funny with a name like Starfighters that was related to video game stuff, even tangentially, given that the Patty Jenkins movie was going to be called Rogue Squadron.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, this could be interesting. It seems like people are pretty excited about it. That was the one that I heard the most about. Like, I didn't really hear about the Darth Maul show, which is something that I would be interested in, would be the Darth Maul show more than the Starfighter one. So, yeah.
Yeah, there was some news. We've got Andor season 2 coming.
Mm-hmm.
There've been Ahsoka season 2 is about to start filming.
Yeah.
They have like storyboards and stuff out.
They found the replacement for the guy, a person to play Balin. So Balin, I think, will be back, but played by a different actor.
I had heard rumors that basically like Ahsoka season 2 is going to kind of split off, or Ahsoka season 1's ending was going to kind of split off, where like the Thrawn stuff was going to just lead into a movie, and everything else was going to lead into Ahsoka season 2. Apparently, a Thrawn Akbar showdown is supposed to be part of Ahsoka season 2. So, if the movie was going to be there, then it's not the case anymore. Oh yeah, and seeing you scrolling through there, yeah, there's also they had I guess a panel on the new Mandalorian and Grogu movie, which that still seems like
That's so
it
weird.
still seems weird for that to be a movie because it's one of it's the kind of thing. It's like the same criticism the MCU is getting, where it's like it's a movie for people that are already watching everything that comes out on Disney Plus, and not for people who don't have Disney Plus.
Watch,
Like
they put it out and it
that
actually
title
went
is
to...
not a good title for people with no idea who Grogu is. Like The Mandalorian would be a better title for a movie than The Mandalorian and Grogu. But I guess they kind of wanted to lean into the lone wolf and cub stuff.
Yeah, like I don't know, like, well, just watch and it'll actually be a really good movie.
I mean, I don't doubt it. Like most of the Mando stuff has been good. I think it's a bad title. I think it's only going to draw in people that already would have watched a Mandalorian season 4 if it aired.
Yeah, to be fair, it's like the issue with a lot of the Star Wars stuff lately, where it's just character name, and I'm like, can you come up with a better name than that? Like it worked for the Mandalorian because he's supposed to be like this mystery dude. We don't know
And there was always
exactly
who is the Mandalorian? Is it Boba Fett?
Yeah.
And then we find out obviously in episode 1 it's not Boba Fett. But all right. So as we move into the summary, we have a question from Army Boy. Does the panel think that K9 may make another, I'm assuming, on-screen appearance again? Anybody have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I'd assume so. I mean, it's easy enough. It's just the prop and
so. Well, yeah, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I guess that, like, ultimately it will depend on how both creators is it like one creator's still alive, the other's gone, or
I'm not sure if either are still alive now. It was Bob Baker and Dave Martin, right?
I think so.
Let me see.
Yeah, Bob Baker and Dave Martin wrote The Invisible Enemy, which is where he debuted. So they'd be
Bob Baker died in 2021. And Dave Martin.
Oh, in 2007.
And in 2007.
So, yeah, wow. So yeah, I guess
so,
it depends on
initially that was the case, that only Bob Baker was around when they did the K9 show. My personal take is I do not want a specifically K9 appearance. If we see K9, I want him to be either in the company of, I would say Luke Smith. It kind of, the way things are going, it seems more likely that it would be Ronnie Chandra instead. Or Romana, or old Lilo while we still have Louise Jameson. Which, I mean, I haven't heard anything about her being in bad health. I'm just saying I don't know how old she is off the top of my head. But like, if we have K9, I want it to be a specific K9 in the company of characters that we've seen. I think the odds of us getting a crossover where the Doctor goes into the future and meets, the Professor Griffin and his companions is pretty close to zero. So I don't think that's an option.
Yeah.
But one of the three classics I think is a possibility.
I mean, like, I've still gone on for like forever that it would be nice to have like a one-off special that brings the Sarah Jane Adventures supporting cast back, supporting cast, main cast, etc. As like that's like give this show a proper send-off kind of a thing. And like that would be a spot to bring K9 back for.
For sure. All right, so I guess that brings us to the summary. So I'm ready for a countdown whenever you are.
All right. So I guess 3, 2, 1, go.
The Doctor and Belinda are still trying to get back to the date of the first episode of the finale. And the Doctor creates a device to basically land and kind of set up almost anchors to help get there. They land in their first spot, which happens to be Miami in 1952. They go out. It happens to be 4 a.m. So basically, they're like, we don't want to fucking deal with segregation as a main plot, so it's 4 a.m. They go into a diner where first they happen to just see a theater that has been chained up with some, we miss you, possibly rest in peace. We don't know what's going on, sort of notes around the entrance. So, of course, the Doctor gets curious. And even though they could land, they decide to investigate, which, they got all dressed up for it. Might as well investigate. They go into a diner, which they're technically not legally allowed into, but the server, host, whatever we would call him in a 1950s diner, doesn't really care. And so they end up talking. They find out that basically a bunch of people went missing a few months prior in that theater, which led to it being chained up. And the caretaker slash what's the name of the person who runs the projector? I know there's a word for it, but I'm blanking at the moment. Ends up is still there and has been playing movies to himself for whatever reason. The two then go inside, and I just realized I skipped the cold open, but that's okay because the Doctor didn't experience it either. They walk in and they see that there is this, living cartoon singing at them, and just walking about on the stage, even though cartoons usually can't walk around on stage. They talk to him a bit and realize, oh, he's the harbinger for one of the gods that we've been dealing with for the 2-season plot. He is Lux, the god of light. However, because he kind of came into being through a projector and cartoons, he's still somewhat controlled by film. So when I wish I had his name in front of me, when the projector guy starts playing the original cartoon, have I really been going on for 3 minutes? Oh, what damn. Starts playing the original cartoon, he is stuck singing. They go into the back and learn that the people that went missing are trapped on film. Lux then comes back to confront them and ends up trapping them or at least seemingly trapping them in a cartoon. They then get out of the cartoon and they go through basically a series of 3 different trials, all of which require them recognizing that they're in, a fictional space and then getting out of it until eventually they manage to burn the film and get out. This causes the Doctor to be burnt, which causes him to use up some regeneration energy to heal himself. Lux realizes he can use this to make a new body and starts doing so with the Doctor. The Doctor then sends Belinda to go and basically set fire to all of the priceless old films stored in the theater, which she does, which allows the light from outside to come in, which causes Lux to start growing into first seemingly becoming kaiju sized, but then it gets so big that he basically just is merged with the universe and no longer exists as an independent entity. Once he's gone, all of the film has been burnt. All of the people that were trapped now come back, not realizing how much time has passed. The Doctor and Belinda leave, and then Mrs. Flood pops up to be like, hey, I know that that's a TARDIS. don't you think that's weird? Also, the Doctor Who is going to end on May 24th, which is the first day of the two-part finale. The end.
All right, you did that in 4 minutes and 51 seconds.
I did not think that I was going to spend even close to 4 minutes on the summary, but that's what happens when I don't write it down. I literally just talk twice as fast when it's written down, probably because I use a lot less ums and ahs. Alrighty, so we did not do this last time, partially because I was scattered and I forgot, but partially because she wasn't really a companion yet. She had never traveled in the TARDIS yet. So, Belinda Chandra, as our new companion. And so first in our pecking order is Aaron. So Aaron, what is your impression of Belinda?
I like that she's kind of feisty and still kind of questions the Doctor. But I feel like they still, even though they have like this big discussion about trust and the Doctor opening up, like when they're scared and they're in the cartoon, and they're talking, he's like opening up. I'm like, well, okay, this is what happened with Gallifrey, and I'm actually really scared that this could be something really bad that happened that's not letting us get into May 24th. So I feel like a switch flipped, that suddenly she was actually really harsh on the Doctor, and all of a sudden, like, she's kind of buddy with him and hugging him and like kissing his hand and stuff. Granted, they have just gone through a huge experience and everything. They've fought a god. Like, that's a big thing to do on like your first real adventure as a companion. I felt like that switch was flipped a little too much, and that they wanted that she as a character really wanted to debate more, like the whole thing with segregation and all that, and go over it in more detail. But obviously, that's not what this episode is about. Yeah, I I kind of like her, but she went from having a personality to not having one. Is that kind of what happened? It feels like it. It feels like it. I mean, she is still, helping, and she's still doing a lot of stuff. She attempts to light the film on fire and everything, so she's not just standing there as a complete blank slate. But I don't know. I kind of liked her better in the first episode, where it was like more confrontational, and I feel like she's a little too friendly with him right now.
Okay, so you think the conflict was resolved too quickly and that it
Yeah.
kind of like lessens her personality as a result?
Yeah, kind of. I think her personality was like, you're taking me home. You are a dangerous person. Yeah, I liked that aspect of her character, that was like, she wasn't just questioning. She was like, no, I'm going to, hold you to this and everything. And now she seems a little bit softer and more kind of passive of a person and willing to just follow him on his adventures. We'll see what happens in the next episode, but right now, I don't hate her. I'm just kind of, I don't know. I'm a little meh. She's kind of
Okay.
meh.
I do wonder how much of that is an actual change in how she's going to be written versus we got to the point of the episode where it was no longer conducive for them to be arguing.
Mm-hmm.
I also wonder how much of that came from, oh, we've encountered a malevolent god, and this malevolent god is scared of the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to meet this guy who is basically talking like he could be, I don't know, Han Solo, or there's a better analog, but I'm not. He happens to come to mind immediately.
Army.
Somebody who you don't necessarily have super faith in versus somebody who's like, I've toppled worlds, and like the gods that he's confronting are like, yeah, I know.
Army Boy says she reminds him of Tiana from Princess and Frog.
I still have not seen that.
Have I?
I've seen it, but it's been a while. I mean,
Hmm.
her whole thing is just being very uh, working class, aspires to own her own restaurant, I think, at some point.
Okay.
Stuff like that. Yeah, like in terms of like her taking the back seat, you compare this to like the Devil's Cord, where because of the season arc going on with Ruby, she's sort of a focal point, but not really. But they kind of do, like Russell basically did the same thing twice, where the companion took the back seat in that story. Where like this is much more about the Doctor than it is the companion,
Yeah.
even though like
Yeah.
at least with Ruby we'd had a special with her and an episode. We've had one episode with Belinda prior to this.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Feels like she probably should have been like had more to do.
and yeah, that's an interesting thing. Is you would almost think like this being the second episode and introducing Belinda to the main plot, you'd want her to kind of be the one who solves the problem, the one like proving that she belongs on the TARDIS, even though she's not on there by choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking about it like if you compare this to Rose's first outing, I don't think she necessarily in the end of the world. I don't remember if she actually contributed anything. Like she showed who her character was, but I don't think she necessarily contributed anything to saving the day, unless my memory is just not remembering what it was.
I mean, I
Let's
don't think
see.
she really contributed anything either time. Like in the episode named after her, she didn't really do much in terms of like helping solve the problem. She's there,
Mhm.
but it's the
Yeah,
Doctor
but I
who
mean
fixes
that's the pilot.
everything.
Like that's the episode about Welcome to Doctor Who, so you don't really
Yeah,
expect
yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah.
Smith and Jones was oh no, that was the first. I mean, that was the first appearance of Martha. That's entirely the Doctor.
Shakespeare, yeah.
Shakespeare Code. Um, Martha. I don't remember Martha being involved in the like resolution of the episode.
Hmm.
Partners in Crime. I don't even remember how that episode was resolved, to be honest.
I mean, I think it's mainly just like getting the aliens to bugger off more than
Yeah, like
anything,
isn't it
if I
like the
remember
nanny
right.
comes and collects the baby aliens? The adipose?
Yeah.
Well, the point was supposed to be that like all of the humans would turn into adipose, and then the nanny planet was going to come and take them. Oh wait, no, maybe I think they were doing it illegally, and they had like
Yeah.
I don't, yeah, so like the intergalactic authorities do them, but
Yeah.
basically, I
Probably one
don't
of
think.
those. It might have been one of those invoking the Shadow Proclamation stuff.
Yeah, maybe, or an early version of it, and then Space Babies. Did Ruby have much to do with the resolution of Space Babies?
No?
I think
I
that's
mean,
not. I think
I
this
think
might be
this.
an RTD thing. I think RTD might just not be good at introducing companions by having them play a big role in the plot.
I mean, like, yeah, because like she's in Church on Ruby Road. Like it's centered around her, but she's doesn't really
Like it's the day is saved by
resolve
the doctor having
anything.
fancy gloves.
Yeah. I mean, Space Babies. She's like, I think maybe she's part of the reason the Doctor doesn't just jettison the
Yeah,
snot
that right.
monster out into space, but I think that's about it.
Which actually that kind of relates to uh Amy's first trip abroad, which was
Yeah.
uh
Mind you, yeah.
I forget. Yeah, that's interesting. Like, and it because that almost seems like a no-brainer that when you have the companion take their first trip, you have them
Mm.
win to kind of win them over and show like that they're equal with the doctor, or
Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
at least can stand on the
Mm.
same foot with the doctor. But often
Yeah.
it seems what we're seeing here is that really doesn't happen until at least a couple stories in,
Yeah.
traditionally.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we
Beast
have
Below, that's the one I was trying to remember.
yeah, and not to mention it's even like she's even like, well, hey, I'm a nurse, I can deal with that burn. The doctor's like, yeah, no need.
Yes.
So it's like, wow, she can't even do her one thing.
I mean, she
Mm-hmm.
did have the thing where she was like, I can tell by your fingers that you're a smoker,
Mm.
which maybe
Oh
that
yeah.
contributed to the ending. I'm not super sure.
Honestly, I keep forgetting that she's a nurse. I'm like most people know what smokers' fingers look like. At least most older people do.
Mm.
I don't think it's really much of a
No.
thing. What with vaping being huge
Like,
nowadays.
I feel like when I was a kid, like all older, all boomers that I knew smoked. So like
Mm-hmm.
there was no such thing as smoker and non-smoker fingers. There were just adult fingers and kid fingers.
Mm. Yeah, like, but yeah, like the funny thing is it occurred to me that we went from an episode where like yeah, like Belinda feels is getting a bit shafted because we've got the episode that's all about her and that she does show off at least some of her nursing stuff in the previous one.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get to this and she doesn't even she needs the doctor to point out, hey, we're in Florida in the 50s. Segregation's a thing. And I'm thinking, why would that need to be pointed out to her? Like,
So this
that's
this is me not knowing
baffling.
much about what they teach in history classes in schools in other
Mm.
countries. Like any American kid, you would expect to be taught that. Um,
Mm.
would you say that the typical person who does not, I mean, maybe there's a difference between like America has a lot of media in other countries, but
Mm.
would you say the typical person, say where you live, would have a good grasp of what like Jim Crow was and when it ended and where it was and so forth?
Like, I'll put it this way. I do not have like an overall view of that, but when they said 1952 Florida, I was like, "Oh shit, get out of there now." Florida's bad enough now. Like back then,
Mhm.
Jesus. Like, no. I was like when the doctor brings it up, I'm like, "Okay, they are going to at least acknowledge that because otherwise I'm like, "Oh, Jesus, run very fast
Yeah.
now."
The main thing that stood out to me with that was that the two people were calling them like sir and ma'am, and I'm like,
Mm.
would a progressive Floridan be willing to call them sir and ma'am in 1952?
I think it's a matter of like one is a entry level job at a diner, so he kind of just has to, and the woman is being nice because you want to hear about my son that went missing.
Hmm.
I think that's it because like the projectionist, I think it's also just a matter of caught up in the situation. Um, but yeah, 1950s
Whereas,
Florida.
whereas we know the
I'm
cop
like,
would have used other language, but they wanted to keep
oh
the
yeah,
the
yeah,
rating.
yeah.
They wanted to keep the rating viewable for kids. So I
Yeah.
I, I understand that.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't Rosa where Ryan gets a rude awakening by getting smacked across the face for
Mhm.
daring to pick up a white woman's handkerchief.
Hmm.
So we've kind of like soft transitioned into Alex's thoughts. Did you kind of share your main thoughts on Belinda or anything more you want to mention?
Um yeah, like it's basically in a similar boat to Aaron where like I found her far more interesting in the first episode than this, but by just mainly just by virtue of she had far less to actually do. So she gets a bit of the Tegan, like, hey, you're trying to get me home. Can we just go? and then just immediately falls into kind of a, not entirely, but a bit of a yes doctor, no doctor, three bags full doctor kind of a companion mode. And it's like, oh, that's a bit less interesting. Like as shafted as Martha could get a lot of the time, she would at least still be Martha. So it's a bit like, oh.
It almost feels kind of lazy, like they didn't want to have to write around a certain amount of animosity. Like, it was too difficult to write for a companion that actually did not like the Doctor. Like, they all have to be in love with the Doctor.
I mean, there was that. Like, you don't want somebody who actively hates the Doctor the whole time.
Yeah.
The closest you're going to get, really, is another Tegan. And even Tegan, Tegan, like, blustered at the Doctor for a while, but really the only reason they kept up Tegan in a way that, like, could be tolerated was because you had Adric for her to argue with. If she was constantly, like, or like, I mean, it was a family, so like you'd have different people agreeing and disagreeing with each other. If it was just Tegan and the Doctor always disagreeing with each other for the entire 2 seasons, it would have gotten old very quickly.
Unless Tegan got the upper hand on the Doctor, right?
Sometimes, or at the very least, would be argumentative with him, and he'd just kind of be like, whatever, and just kind of like he'd, rather than getting into proper arguments, he'd just kind of like placate her or just kind of try to move on from whatever the scenario was. But also it helped that, like, after, I forget what episode, like what serial it was, but there is a point where she's like, hey, no, I'm actually starting to enjoy this. I'm not in as much of a rush now. And it's more the 5th Doctor being like, no, you said you wanted to get home, so we're going to keep trying.
Whereas, so what we see here is she wants to get home. But I feel like once they're in the situation, she's like, okay, I at least know he's competent. But not necessarily trust. Wasn't there supposed to be a whole, like, from the trailers, they did the duplicitous cutting thing where they had dialogue from one episode over the visuals from another, wasn't it? Because they never actually had that conversation of like, you can't get me home, yes I can. Like, that wasn't in this episode.
Yeah, that was in the previous. Oh no, it might be in the next one. But there is, of course, that moment of like,
or sorry, you can't keep me safe. Yes, I can. I will keep you safe. I mean, like, that part was definitely not in this episode.
Yeah, I think that moment was previous, and this has the Doctor admitting, yeah, I can't get you home, and I don't know why, and it's freaking me out.
So the one I've most seen Belinda compared to is Donna, because they're both kind of these actual adult companions who, have their opinions. They're not as quick to following the Doctor. Donna was very much a comedy companion who transitioned over season into a drama companion. Belinda is a drama companion right off the bat, and presumably is going to stay that way. So that is kind of a point against her from a writing perspective. There's a lot more you can do when the whole point of your character is she says things and the audience laughs. That's not the case with Belinda at all. What we have with Belinda, the first episode was all about Belinda, but she wasn't a sci-fi character yet. She was a hospital drama character that got dragged into a sci-fi episode. And then she had her conflict with the Doctor. And then we have this episode. It's noteworthy, right? She kind of like is like, okay, I want to go, but I'm not actively hostile to the idea of investigating this. And then she kind of starts to have fun right up until the evil god comes out. Then they have the moment, they have a few moments of actually learning who the Doctor is, learning the Doctor is not just like, a comedy character himself, although, he he kind of plays that role here a lot of the time because Belinda is a much more serious character than the Doctor. So she learns that there's seriousness to him. I mean, I think the like adding depth scene, there's some well, literalness is not correct because we're talking about figurative depth, but they are, they're gaining depth in one another. I mean, everything Belinda says that is stuff the Doctor already knew, so it didn't really affect his perception of her. But like, he's literally gaining depth in the figurative sense. That's a really awkward way to put it. But she's learning that he's more than a two-dimensional character. So there's some strong analogies happening in that scene. And then she's also seeing him, solve problems. She's seeing, well, I don't know if the fans scene really had any effect on her attitude toward him. That scene, unfortunately, did have to show, like, oh, she's not a sci-fi character. In fact, she is coming very, very slowly drawing conclusions that everyone in the room has already made. So that's not good for like the way she's judged. I don't think that makes her bad, but it does it makes her look dumb during a part of the episode when it would be nice if there were more things for her to look competent on. Then we move on. They reference multiple times that she's a nurse to the point where like, this isn't Mel. We're not going to completely forget that part of her character. But then, yeah, she doesn't have much like agency. She does what the Doctor says. Then she does what the projector guy says. Then she watches the Doctor's plan run out. And that, I don't think is a flaw in Belinda the way that it sounds like you are leaning toward. But I think that's a flaw in the writing structure of the episode. But I don't think that means that the character has lost her, like, if I say spice, it sounds like I'm saying like it from a racial sense, and I'm not. I'm saying in terms of like character conflict and not just being, oh, yeah, yes, Doctor, walk on me, but actually like, butting heads with him. I think she's going to continue butting heads with him, just not as much. I think it's just going to be to a level that's tolerable for a serialized show rather than being actually antagonistic, like that guy that none of us liked, Danny Pink.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting that Danny
she's not
Pink
going to be
existed.
Danny Pink. And I guess that, I mean, yeah, it's quite. Well, I don't know how much actual time we spent on it, but I think that's the majority of my thoughts so far. I want to see her solve a problem because I think she thought she was solving a problem in episode 1, but she really wasn't. And in this episode, she doesn't get that chance. When the next episode comes, I hope we're going to see her really solve a problem. And not just relying on her nursing skills. I mean, maybe I'm not going to say that's necessarily a bad thing, but like the main things nurses are known for are things that a lot of companions have excelled in. The companion is the human side of the Doctor. A nurse is often the human side of the healthcare system or the human side of a doctor. So nurses have a lot of strengths in a healthcare setting. But a lot of the ones that would generalize to adventuring are things that we're used to seeing from companions. So what we would want to see from Belinda are maybe, I mean, the fact that she's an older than typical companion could be a relevant factor in terms of her being portrayed in an original way that we haven't seen before. Her ethnic background is not super new to companions, but there still could be interesting stories, interesting problem solving there that is different from the typical companion. But that said, we haven't necessarily seen anything about her other than just not being white and not having an English name that really says anything about whether she, had any particular ethnic upbringing. So we don't necessarily know that that's the way her character is going to be written, or even like, she could be 5th generation English for all we know. So I'm just trying to think of what they could do to like have this companion stand out. But that said, a lot of companions have been like Ruby Sunday. Well, Ruby Sunday had the adoption angle. That was the most that was the unique thing about her. So I don't end of yeah. So yeah, I mean, at this point, I think I'm getting into predictions. So it's probably just to just cut into the summary because predictions come later, or not summary or review. Aaron, what did you like about this episode?
Hmm. I I liked how this kind of follows on some of the themes from the previous episode. For example, Mr. Ringadang is someone who never goes out. Like we meet later on in the episode that there's fans who kind of act like shut-ins, like they're kind of super minor characters who obsess over the one thing, which is the Doctor Who show that they're watching. I think that this kind of ties into kind of the incel stuff we saw in the previous episode, especially when it concerns, like loneliness and obsession. I almost the way that things are
Oh, it's
progressing.
noted that the Doctor Who fans did like they went out and met each other because of Doctor Who,
Yeah,
so that's a little different from
I guess
never going out.
the fans are kind of like that, but like Mr. Ringading is kind of reminds me a little bit of Alan from before, but like he Mr. Ringading actually gets a redemption at the end of this story, whereas Alan obviously did not. Um, there's kind of like a question I had too, is that with the obsession with like the opposite sex in these two episodes, are we looking at maybe an anti-asexual message or something? It's because that's kind of asexuals or something that have are people who have like really kind of come out into their own lately too. As part of like the whole kind of progressive sexuality thing that we're seeing. Um, so I'm kind of really it left me with like a lot of questions and kind of left me thinking about like not just this episode but like the previous one. Like like I said, themes of loneliness. Uh, Gosh, yeah, like I think there's like a depth to this story that I kind of enjoyed. So that's what I'm gonna say is like the theme of loneliness, and possibly the tying back to Alan in the previous episode, to Mr. Ringading.
So when you say like obsession with sex, you're saying like the wife sort of thing?
Well, I'm talking about like, well, you've got the wife, but you also have Miss Sunshine at the very beginning. He's just like
Okay.
he's kind of pushing instead of obsessing over Miss Sunshine, like Alan obsessed over Belinda. You got Mr. Ringading is actually kind of pushing Miss Sunshine away, which some people also kind of lump incels into the whole both obsession and pushing the opposite sex away. So that's
Okay.
kind of an interesting thing. And of course it ignores a lot of the more progressive stuff around gender too. Um yeah, so I think that there's a bit of depth here that I picked up on, that may have been missed my first viewing. So
Oh, although all the talk about like like gendered interactions and stuff reminds me also the fact that it just like a particular scene just came up on the slideshow as I'm watching the Twitch stream. I'm pretty sure that cleavage would not have been
mm-hmm.
just ignored in 1952 Miami,
Exactly. I was wondering
even
like
though it's a very warm place.
is her dress really
Hmm.
appropriate for that era?
Yeah.
Like she was like, "Oh, is what I'm wearing going to get me arrested in 1952?" Probably not, but what she
Hmm.
changed into might.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although
Like if it,
maybe Miami always had a little bit of that going on, but
Mm.
hmm. Especially among mixed company, she probably would have been called some you know,
yes, she would have. There
very
would have been
specific
certain
things.
labels, one with a W, one with
Hmm.
a J, that would have immediately been slapped on her during the daylight
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah. I mean, friggin' hell, Martha gets comments in the Shakespeare Code for just wearing modern clothing, and she was basically like covered head to toe.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think
it
she
was
might have been wearing.
like,
Was she wearing shorts? No, she was wearing a leather jacket
no,
most of the
yeah,
time.
she's wearing a leather jacket and jeans. So it's more so just like this is foreign looking clothing in so
Mm.
far as like alien to them clothing. So
I'm
it's
not.
like
I'm not a historian. I'm wondering if Elizabethan era pants on a woman would have basically been like, oh, she's basically a cross dresser.
probably.
Okay, so Aaron liked the kind of themes that the episode seemed to be touching on. Alex, what did you like about this episode?
Um I guess just the villain in general. I mean, like if you're gonna get Alan coming back this I mean relatively quickly when you think about it, like the last time he was in the Witchfinders. So in the grand scheme, considering how long some actors of like who are that well known have like either only shown up once and that's it. Um that's a fairly quick by comparison turnaround. Um
Although I would argue voicing and acting a character has different standards in a show
yeah,
like
yeah.
this.
Yeah. But like even then like he nailed it. Like I know there was and it'll probably come up depending. But I know there was people that I saw talking about the episode being like, wow, some of these actors are really, really trying very hard to maintain their accents. Whereas Alan Cumming, to be fair, had the benefit of playing a cartoon character that was kind of campy. So he's just doing an intentionally over the top,
Mhm.
like, what's the accent called again? Like, uh, it's like that kind of
Transatlantic.
transatlantic. That's it. Um, accent where it's like I don't know where you'd place it, but it's just generally a that kind of an accent that you would hear in the kind of cartoon he's supposed to be.
Mhm.
Um, and like it never gets old though. I think that helps that he's like for the most part just kind of talking normally outside of like the occasional quotes of going back to the cartoon.
Mhm.
Um yeah, like it was an enjoyable character. Like this, and funnily enough, this feels like I would argue Lux Imperator slash Mr. Ringading is like the most well realized of the three that we've had so far. Like, I like Neil Patrick Harris, and he was acting his ass off, but that version of the toy maker was very, this is a bit much. Even for me. And Jinx Monsoon as um the Maestro. I liked it, but it is very like you either love it or you hate it.
I also
Because
liked
it's
it.
that very yeah, because it is very, as I brought up when we covered it, like there are people who like you're either gonna love that Jinx is starting at 11 and staying there, or you're really not.
Mm.
um, whereas this is like it's a cartoon character, literally, effectively. So like the over the top campiness kind of just fits and works, and they're running with it, and like so it really worked. And between all of that, it felt like, and this is really something I'm only realizing now as I talk about it, that like this character of the entities that we have had so far, since the sort of soft reboot, has felt the most well realized in terms of these like pantheon villains.
Okay. So yeah, so what I liked about the episode was I enjoyed all of the different references. Like they weren't like laying it on super heavy. Like for example, there wasn't a Who Framed Roger Rabbit reference, which I'm pretty sure would have been anachronistic. Like it would have been too late for the 50s.
Yeah.
As much as I would have liked it, but you know they had like Scooby Doo references. They had like Mr. Ringading was basically like a if Looney Tunes had more humans in it kind of character. Like there might be something closer analogous, but that's Looney Tunes is the main thing I've seen people connected to, and I think it's a pretty fair fit. Or Merry Melodies, which is I don't know as much about because it didn't really persist through my era. You had you had the art style in the animated segment, which was kind of it was an art style you saw at that time, but it was kind of its own thing as well. We kind of talked about that when we talked about the trailers. Anybody here read like Archie comics or anything?
No.
Yeah, I used to.
Because I swear that like the way the guy at the diner talks, that he's like he must have been like an Archie reference or something. That's very much more of a like way a cartoon character would talk than a real person.
He's talking like Pops or something. I believe the guy who owns the soda shop in Archie comics is Pops.
Okay.
Unless I'm just thinking of West Side Story, in which case it's also kind of Pops. I just saw that.
I mean,
West Side Story is in New York. There's always a Pops if it's in New York.
I just went and saw West Side Story at the one of the local dinner theaters here, so.
Gotcha. So yeah, I feel like there was a lot of references to media without it being heavy-handed. I mean, granted, there's also like the meta aspects in addition to that, like obviously like Mrs. Flood talking about like the start of the finale of the season, and of course that being the date that the whole plot is around. So there's clearly meta things going on in general, but in terms of this episode, I thought it was handled well with the setting of the episode and the main plot. Like the references were well tied into that. All right, Aaron, what did you dislike about this episode?
In general, let me see here. One thing I thought about defeating Lux with is why didn't they just completely cut power to the cinema? And just like starve Lux. Well, I guess that's because Lux tricked Reginald into like, keeping him fed because of Reginald's wife.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would just cut power completely to the cinema, so like there's no light at all for him to get to. Like block out all the windows and everything, like just starve him and everything.
Which would have worked long term, but not short term by the end.
They would have had to find a way to like contain him or something. And then they probably still wouldn't have been able to rescue the people from the celluloid, so yeah, and
I think it's a
I take it Reginald has to actually leave in order to eat stuff, so I'm like, I don't think he just
1952 Uber Eats.
I don't know if Lux feeds him in there or something like that. So, but they make it sound like he never leaves the cinema, but he has to, because it doesn't look like Lux is sustaining him at all.
That would have been an interesting plot, right? Like the way that like obsession can cause you to like people get obsessed, or they're grieving really heavily, and they might go days without eating or sleeping,
Mm-hmm.
and they may not even notice that they need to until it's like they're in a really bad state. Like that could have been kind of incorporated into this.
Yeah, I mean
Hmm.
that could have
Well,
worked
on that note, I
too.
think, does Reginald end up killing himself at the end? Is that?
Yeah, he blows up.
Yeah.
Uh, and also this takes 3 months. There's like 3 months since they
Yeah,
shut
there's
down the
no way he went
theater.
3 months without eating unless supernatural
Yeah.
shenanigans are happening.
I mean, I would be
And if
okay
they were
with.
both if they
Mm-hmm.
were both feeding each other, then especially with the relationship at like it causes
Mm.
weird implications that I don't think they would have been wanting to go for, at least not
I mean,
intentionally.
it would have been interesting if like Lux was using the wife's image in order to drain Reginald's life, or in order to maybe sustain Reginald and give him like a little bit of Lux's power. And if that was the case, then Lux struggling to walk up the stairs would make sense, because hey, he's used a lot of his power just to keep Reginald going so that Reginald could feed him.
Hmm.
So that would make sense why he'd be so weakened by that. Whereas it seemed kind of odd. I can't remember why he was struggling to get up the stairs. If it was just like, I know the doctor just brushed it off as a game, like a deadly game and stuff. So
I think it was most like he didn't really understand moving around in a 3D plane.
yeah, like he should have never
I mean, he
learned
does.
perspective or something.
Yeah. He talks about like, wow, it's so big when I first showed up. Like, I shouldn't have learned perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
something wonky going on with that.
Hmm. And that's where, yeah, I think in a different story that could have been really dove into, but I think in this story, it could have been a waste of 10, 15 minutes if they had really explored that much further. In
Mm.
this case, it was really just an excuse to give them, 5 minutes to have a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well that's my thing, is like, I kind of wonder if they what would have happened if they just got the power, but I think you're right. It would have just been like a temporary solution.
Yeah, they would have. I think they would have had to keep the power off long enough for him to starve to death, and Reginald would not have tolerated that at the beginning of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Alex, what do you dislike about this story?
I had one, and then I realized, nah, it's more of a scene problem than an overall, or at least it's better left to scenes than an overall. I will say. So the other thing that came to mind is, Murray, can you please turn it down on the music? Some instances in this it was fine, but others I'm just like chill out, just calm down, please.
Mm-hmm.
This did not need like this specific scene here and this scene there and etc. did not need loud bombastic score. Like, it's one of those things where I'm almost kind of missing the Chibnall era already, because fuck, like they do not, like Russell does not know restraint.
What if it was scored like a 1952 cartoon?
I mean, that would have been at least like fit the shtick, so I would have been fine with it. Or at least it would have made a bit more sense. But
There would have
there's
needed to
like,
have been at least one chase scene for me to tolerate that.
yeah. Hmm. Um. But it's like, I remember someone, like I remember like the approach to music in the Chibnall era being, and I think even I made the comparison of it, almost felt like the Chibnall era was going for more of a classic Who thing, with the music was more incidental than like always having to have themes and this and that. Like they did still have like themes here and there, but for the most part, it was just kind of there between dialogue, and then maybe it would kick in for certain moments, but otherwise you just kind of let things go, or it just wouldn't be overwhelming. And yeah, I'm just realizing, you know what, Murray, you had 10 years. I could probably have just gone with someone new. Now, mind you, it's Russell as well, so he'd probably be like, no, do this, more, but, you know, yeah. We won't know until Russell works with someone who isn't Murray Gold, basically.
Maybe yeah. If we check out his other shows, maybe we'll see. So now at this point, I'm wondering if we had not had that conversation at the start of the review, would anything about would either of you have changed? Would either of yours least favorite overall things about the episode have been something different? Anything about Belinda or anything, or are those complaints relatively minor compared to the ones you just brought up?
I probably had the one I had before was definitely not Belinda related, but we did kind of get like issues with how Belinda was handled out of the way as well. So,
Like, I almost wonder, because we did go over Belinda. I didn't really. The more I think of it, the more I think that maybe she's the biggest problem with this episode. Maybe.
Okay, so you think if we had not talked about Belinda at all, that she specifically would have been the thing that was your
No,
general dislike?
I wouldn't have even thought of her, honestly, because like
Okay,
I didn't even think of her as being a problem until I started actually thinking of her as being a problem. And then it's just like,
gotcha.
yeah, and now I can't stop thinking about like, well, she could have been a lot better in this and she wasn't. Yeah. I mean, I still kind of stick to what I said. I have a few other things written down too. But yeah.
So I've been having trouble coming up with things that you can't argue are technically a scene. But because of that, that means obviously I can't have a bunch of different least favorite scenes. So I'm gonna say the whole thing about the foreshadowing. They literally, so kind of if you follow through the line, they were like, oh, the ending was super well foreshadowed. It was too obvious. And then the very next scene, they're like, oh, if we stop the film from moving, it causes it to burn. So I feel like they were really leading the audience to think, oh, you need to stop Lux from moving, and that'll cause him to burn and to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And then they went a completely different route. So I was like, what do you mean? Like, that whole thing about the like, if you stop it from moving thing seemed to fly in the face of any idea of foreshadowing. So it's like, oh, well, what doesn't he do? It's like, well, he doesn't stop moving because he's a cartoon. He's always like being animated and moving around and talking. Although I guess he did technically stop moving in that scene where the Doctor and Belinda were like circling him. So that would have been a plot. That would have been. It would have needed to rewrite that scene a little bit if that was the true case. That like if he stops moving, he starts burning. But it really seemed like that's what they were foreshadowing the ending to be. So it felt weird when like the ending was like, oh yeah, matches, because I die if you light a room on fire with me in it too. Like that's not unique to the gods at all. So yeah, that just kind of felt a bit weird. Like I guess not a huge thing in the grand scheme of things, but like it bugged me and I needed to find a place to talk about it. Favorite scenes?
My favorite scene, let's see here. I actually.
Oh, also, I just noticed. I don't know how often this refreshes, and if the 2 minutes ago is still accurate. But I just noticed we have a new follow from Zerift, and since we don't get a lot of live follows, I figured mention it. I know most streams just talk about new subs, but we don't have those, so we have a new follower.
Yay! Hi,
So
Zareth.
thanks for following.
Zareth is actually someone who streams with Matt and Barry and myself.
Oh, nice.
On Tuesdays and
Oh,
Wednesdays.
I guess it is up to date because it just changed from 2 minutes ago to 3 minutes ago, so it was new. I wasn't ignoring it for an hour.
Yeah, much appreciated, Zareth. Thank you. And that, I guess so. For my favorite scene, I'm actually going to go with the cartoonified Doctor and Belinda. Mostly because I grew up watching like Ruby Spears and Filmation and Hanna-Barbera cartoons like in like the early to mid 80s. And so watching it, I thought that the animation was pretty faithfully replicated. And then the fact that, you know, the more they discuss their feelings and whatnot, the more 3D they become. So like kind of slowly showing them become 3D, which is actually kind of different from how Lux becomes 3D. If you notice, they kind of just add more modeling and shading and stuff onto them, and then they kind of become people. Whereas Lux actually goes through like a whole grid, what is it? A modeling like framework, like a framework, a wire framework for a 3D model.
Yeah, then they added the textures, the color and textures after.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. And I just like the homage they gave to it, especially since they kept mentioning like Scooby-Doo and everything, and the limited animation techniques that Hanna-Barbera would use with like the kind of the choppy animation and stuff. And also being an anime fan, I also know a little bit about limited animation, how it can be used for the good of animation, as like how anime does it. So but yeah, I think I just thought it was really nice how they did that, and a lot of fun and different.
Now I'm just imagining a scene if there was like, you know, like the a wall of like washed out faded film, and then there was like a really important film roll that was like super detailed animated, and they had to go in and grab it, like, you know, the sort of thing everyone talks about that you see in a lot of animation. Though I think that's more with modern animation than with older stuff. All right. At first I forgot that I did the thing I always do, and I was like, oh, are we on least favorite scenes? Why is Erin saying the animated is her least favorite scene? I was like, no, Bill, do not skip forward again. This is favorite scenes. All right, Alex, favorite scene.
Ooh, let's see. Honestly, because of how it was handled, I'm gonna go with. I mean, it's probably a couple I could go with, but just because of how like subtle and intro it was to everything, them arriving and the doctor mentioning that it's 4 a.m. and then having a look at his skin and going, probably for the best. Like all dressed up and no one see us. Oh yeah, probably a good thing. It was just like a nice, like, you know, not like they do like spell it out like a little later, but at the very least that little bit of and the doctor being like, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, I like the doctor for a change being the one to realize this could be an issue.
Yeah, he's remembering Dot and Bubble.
Yeah. Yeah, and also just a matter of like a black actor this time, so harder for the doctor to miss when normally the doctor is white, and thus
I mean, the doctor forgot being female. at times
Yeah.
when that was relevant. So
Yeah.
that's why I think like having an actual episode that doctor has experienced, I think makes a big difference in remembering that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
stuff.
Hmm. Um, but yeah, it's very yeah, it's like it's one of those things again, yeah, double-edged sword. It's like it's nice for the doctor to be the first one to realize that when previously it's been like Martha and Bill being like, "Hey, is this time period safe for me?"
Hmm.
Um, but double-edged sword in the sense that like it seems weird that Belinda doesn't catch on until he's like, it's 1952, segregation's a thing. Because I'm like, I feel like she'd probably just, even if, yeah, from the UK and all, but you'd think she'd still be like, right, yeah. Like,
Hmm.
after the initial, like, oh, wow, we time travel thing wears off, you think she'd be like, oh, actually, this is a bad idea. Like,
Hmm.
actually, this could go very badly, but yeah.
All right. So favorite scenes that remain. I think I'm going to go with the oh, you need to get your continuity straight. Because on one hand, like it's a perfect nod to all the like meta stuff and the Doctor Who fans in the following segment and whatever. And on the other, it's just the Doctor being aware of his surroundings was something that maybe the audience could have picked up as well if they had thought to pay attention. But instead, the audience is probably going to be worried about this cop that shows up and points a gun at the Doctor. And the Doctor, meanwhile, is just like, no, I've been around the block before, and I noticed something is wrong here, uh, and that this is probably still fictional.
Mm.
So that was a good scene.
I'll especially give him credit because, like, I never would have clocked that. I'm an Australian. Why the hell would I know police uniforms are different in different places in the
Yeah,
US?
he
Like,
specifically. I mean, and that maybe that comes from actually being the time traveler. Um,
yeah, because, like,
he
yeah,
like
Belinda
I
not
wouldn't know what an
knowing I can
NYPD
buy.
1950s uniform looks like.
Yeah,
He's probably been in 1950s and in New York City.
yeah. So, like, it would make sense that he would clock that. Belinda wouldn't.
All right, least favorite scenes.
Let me see here. I didn't really have too many. Um, hmm. I'm gonna say Mr. Ring-a-Ding gloating over nuclear annihilation. I get it, but it was still kind of cringy and like this has like been done a billion times. The power of the atom is mine at last. You know.
I mean, in his case, it's more, yes, the beautiful light that it creates
Mhm.
kind of a
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah, I kind of was like, okay, we need a thing to remind us that this guy isn't just like weird. He's actually like, we don't want him unleashed on the earth. Although maybe
Yeah.
Mhm.
that's it. They were like, oh well, we can't figure out how to give this episode stakes. So yeah, so it's kind of a double-edged sword in that way.
Yeah, it
We
Mm.
didn't
just
know how to give this episode stakes, so we had him watch videos about the atomic bomb over and over again.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, he kidnaps people and imprisons them in celluloid, so as if that wasn't bad enough. But like, yeah, I think you're right. They need to kind of up the ante on this. So they were just kind of, they went for like the low hanging fruit of like nuclear, you know, capability or nuclear power and stuff. So I mean,
And that,
it is going to be like something that he'd be interested in, but it's also kind of weird that he never saw any movies about sunshine. before this. I
Ah,
mean,
good point. Yeah,
and then
or I didn't. He didn't put it
Sunshine.
together other than that it was just a source
I
of
mean,
light.
he was in a movie. He was in a short film with a character called Mrs. Sunshine or Little Miss Sunshine or something like that. Which is interesting foreshadowing, but
And the sun thing also kind of feels like an ass pull to me because obviously, like, yes, if you're close to the sun, it's stronger than an atomic bomb. But like, if an atomic bomb went off 2 blocks from me and the sun, I could see the sun in the sky. The sun is not the one that would be having the bigger effect on my life at that moment. So
Yeah.
yeah. Like I thought that was just kind of, I don't know, a little kind of, it changes, like it's like the fans say the main character changes his motivations. Or like the main
the
villain, I should say.
right. I I think I would have liked it if it was more like it seemed like was his concern in the beginning, right? It's like if he goes outside, there's it'll the light will kind of wash him out. There won't be any dark for him to be portrayed against, and therefore like a projector doesn't do anything if you're shining a flashlight on the same spot. I thought it was going to be that sort of thing with the sun, and they were like, oh, we have to have this happen before he finishes making a body. Um, the way it actually ended was a little weird.
Oh my
Well,
god,
and
they gave him the what's your face ending. The Christmas special ending. I've become the star.
oh god, oh no.
No, no.
Is that the scene you meant in the group chat that it felt like Moffat had written a scene? Alex?
Oh no, we'll get to that in a second.
Okay, is that your least favorite scene? Go ahead then.
Now, I will preface this with I don't entirely hate it. However, the fake out fourth wall break with the fans of the show, because that absolutely felt like Moffat wrote it. Like immediately what came to mind was the Moffat mocking fanfic writers in Sherlock. Is immediately what came to mind. Like, I mean, this seems like it's coming from a better place. That seems like it was like intentionally mocking, whereas this is like, it feels like what RTD is trying to do is good-natured ribbing, but making your fans look like schlubby losers who are like, yeah, people think we're annoying. We hear that all the time. Is very like, what are we going for here, Russell?
Yeah, especially for a show that like is kind of like it paints itself as being like the cultural pastime that everyone in Britain watches.
Yeah.
And that's very clearly not how they're portraying their fans.
Yeah.
I also saw some people that, they took the scene. Oh, yeah, I love how they, portrayed Doctor Who fans as slur and slur. I'm like, oh, yeah, these are the people that are enjoying this episode. That's a problem.
Yeah, because I noticed that it seemed like, I think it's Lizzie, who, she seems to be neurodivergent. Like, because if you look at her, she kind of squints and kind of looks away from the doctor whenever he tries to look at her. And I think that's a trait that's common with people with certain types or certain forms of autism, I believe. Yep. So.
Yeah, eye contact aversion.
Yeah. Like, it just felt, I mean, I think I even joked somewhere that it felt very like, that scene from Sherlock meets Love and Monsters, because Love and Monsters has been interpreted as like the people who are searching for the Doctor are just basically an analogy for fans of the show.
Oh yeah,
right.
I didn't even think of that, but it makes sense.
So and
I
it's
know
like,
the guy who becomes who's secretly the Absorbaloff. I know
mm.
there's a theory that he's supposed to be like an Ian Levine stand-in because he like
uh,
turns like being a fan into like this like really strict, really
mm.
unfun way of going about it.
Hmm.
I could see that. Um, but yeah, it just felt very like, I don't know what we're going for here, Russell, but this feels like a miss for the most part.
Mhm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
at least it turns around to be like, no, actually, we're fictional people created by Lux, but it's still just kind of like, what are we doing? Like, and especially like the like, oh, I saw that coming. I saw this coming because it was leaked online. Hashtag RIP Doctor Who, and I'm like, oh, fuck off, Russell. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, no, internet fan base is all you've got left. Like, regular people aren't watching Doctor Who as much anymore. Like, you get, like, do not invoke that wrath, please. You don't need that. Let alone
Mhm.
like we don't. I mean, fucking hell. Like, the show is like had a wink nudge, usually at its own expense. Like if you take into account like Trial of the Time Lord and you know, like, and also like the fans immediately jumping to Blink and him trying to be like, well, what about this new stuff? And like, no, Blink. And that felt very like, you aren't appreciative
That
of my
one,
genius.
see that one I mean that one I thought was funny because it wasn't like
Mm,
I mean, maybe it could certainly be coming from an annoyed place, but it's like it's fun.
mm,
I thought it was a little funny. It's like yes, the doctor's like, oh, there's no stories with me in it. Is in fact it's just this one Doctor Light episode that you like from years ago, before I
yeah.
regenerated 3 times. So I thought that was
Mm,
funny, even though like there's very clearly like a real world inspiration for it.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
honestly,
Like it was.
yeah. Sorry.
It's more of a thing of like it could be taken either way. It could be like that is the aspect of ITD ripping himself a bit. That in the era that his first era, the episode that people think of as a one that Moffat wrote instead of one that
Mm-hmm.
he
Right.
wrote. Um, but it also could be very like a bit too on the nose jab at like, oh well, people aren't recognizing my genius and what I'm doing right now, kind of a thing. Which,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know Russell as a person, so it could be either. It could be him intentionally trolling.
Or at least, I mean, I wouldn't even go so far as like the genius thing, but just like, oh, you really don't like anything that I'm making right now?
Hmm. But like, it's funny because like I think of this, and then I think of Greatest Show in the Galaxy, where there's the nerdy kid who's like, oh, I've seen all the old ones because I find the old satellites, and I know it's not quite as good as it used to be, but I still love it. And like that doesn't feel. And I'm not saying this is mean spirited. It's not. This feels like it's trying to do something nice, but kind of failing at it. Um, and that from classic seemed less like it. That didn't either seem like it was trying to be mean spirited so much as just uh because it's like he's just the representation of like clearly our fan base would be very geeky and nerdy, so they just portray him that way, but it's not like a big deal. Like I've seen Greatest Show in the Galaxy generally described like people assuming that was a commentary on where the show was at that point, like ratings are low, so no one's there. Basically, there's like a handful of people watching this greatest show in the galaxy, and all that. and it's like I almost wish we were kind of getting self commentary on the show, but I feel like both. I feel like if we were going to get that at all, it would have been from Chibnall. It wouldn't have been from Russell or Moffat because they love the show too much. Like Chibnall loves the show; he's a big fan of it, but I feel like he would have been more willing
Right.
to take a jab, whereas like Russell and Moffat have the show on too high a pedestal that they're like, oh, we can't do that. Like he does it a little bit in that scene, but it's still just kind of like, who I don't know. It's just like if it hits weird. Like I know some people who like it, and it's fair enough if you like the scene, but it's it just hits a really weird spot for me that I'm just like, oh wow, you're making us all out to be antisocial losers. Like, wow, that's great.
Yeah, for what it's worth, that scene was also on my least favorite scene list, just because it seemed awkward and cringe, and it got a little bit funny when it hit
Yeah.
on Blink, and it was kind of fun to see that, oh no, they didn't actually die in the end. They actually survived, and they get to live happy little lives, whatever the hell that would be, you know?
Mhm.
So,
All right. Yeah, so moving from there, so I'll say my least favorite scene, the regeneration thing, the regeneration energy thing was just it annoyed me because it wasn't brought up until it was super convenient for the episode. It was they hadn't even mentioned, I think, that Time Lords regenerate, even though there were opportunities to. And just kind of as a general thing, like the idea that Time Lords can randomly summon regeneration energy has always been a bit weird, and it never makes sense in the episodes in which it happens. Especially him being like, "Oh yeah, I bi-generated a while ago," and even though that created matter from nothing, it gave me more energy that's just been waiting to be conveniently used.
Yeah.
And it
You think
just,
he just yeah, like you think he'd just exploit the fact that the Doctor effectively has endless regenerations now to be like, yeah, I
uh-huh,
can just draw on energy whenever I want.
right?
I don't tend to because it takes a lot out of me, maybe, but
Yeah, and it's like I've mentioned assholes in this episode before. This is just one
mm,
more, so it's like
yeah,
it kind of just seems like the last half of the episode was them being. I don't know. Maybe they were like, "Oh, we don't have the budget for the episode we wrote, so we're going to take the first half of the script and then write the rest of the script from scratch." I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, but it's some like as we analyze it, more and more feels that way.
did anyone watch Doctor Who Unleashed on the making of this episode?
I haven't
No,
yet, but thankfully,
because it's same day, so I just
Oh.
have not made
yeah,
time.
I
Why
haven't
did you?
yet, but I will say I am glad they've started just putting those on the fucking YouTube channel for other
Yes,
countries.
that's such a difference from only people in the UK being allowed to watch it.
Yeah.
Why did you watch it and there was something that came up, or
Uh,
just asking in general?
I meant to watch it and I never did. It's one of those things
Gotcha.
that keeps falling through the cracks for me. Like trying to actually do thorough like investigation, like reading up on the like I had been reading up on the TARDIS wiki articles and everything and any other articles I could find on certain episodes, and
Which
I
yeah, you're not going to
just
really get that for same day release. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I was hoping I'm maybe getting a little bit more behind the scene because Unleashed goes into all behind the scenes stuff. But I didn't get a chance to see it. I stole the images from it though.
Mm. All right. Final thoughts, starting with Aaron.
um, even though this is kind of a weird, it's a Chaos God episode. So like with the Maestro episode, it's gonna be weird. which I don't mind. It's Doctor Who, and that for me, Doctor Who is just strange, weird stuff happening, which sets it apart from a lot of sci-fi that kind of copies Star Trek or copies the space opera of Star Wars. I like kind of the weird, dreamy nonsense that Doctor Who sometimes comes up with. So I actually still really like this episode, even though we've gone through a lot of its flaws, and it is pretty flawed. So I don't think it's going to be a top tier episode, but I think it's going to be pretty good for me. I like the advancement of the Chaos God Lord. I do like Lux Imperator as a Chaos God. I think he's, ironically, for being an over the top cartoon character, I think he's a more, I wouldn't say laid back, but more even handed. He's handled in a somewhat more even handed way than Maestro and Toymaker and even Suit Tech were. Um and actually there was some creepy parts of the episode, like when they're walking around him, like examining this living cartoon in front of them. I thought that the camera pan around him was actually done very well. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of aspects that were done pretty well in this episode. So, yeah, I would highly recommend it.
All right, Alex.
This is. It's kind of funny because this is one where, like, I do really like this. And it's a matter of, There are certain things I have thoughts on, and then there are other bits where I'm like, they do kind of skim over the whole. At least it kind of feels like, anyway. They kind of skim over the segregation stuff, and it's kind of weird that the only, like, to be fair, like 3 white people they interact with are just totally fine. And again, this is like Florida in 1952, and I'm like, I feel like they'd get a bit more pushback from at least the guy behind the counter, who would have to be like, just not acknowledging them. If it was like
Mhm.
even just the mum was, and the guy behind the counter was like, yeah, no, get fucked.
Because it is his job on the line.
Mm,
He'd probably be like, I don't want to.
yeah. I mean, at the same time, 1952, he's not exactly making much per hour. Not that he really would be now, but still. But it's like the stuff like that where I'm like, that's. It feels like we're brushing past this, but I kind of also get it because it's not the point of the episode. To be quite honest, as someone who enjoyed Rosa, I feel like if you're gonna do that at all, it should be the point. But whatever. Like, um, yeah, like I did enjoy this. You can't really go wrong with Alan Cumming playing a cartoon character. For the villain. And in hindsight, this probably would have been like a secondary favorite scene for me would have just been the defeat of Lux, because it's such a different way to win. Because the villain effectively gets what he wants, but at the same time loses. Like, oh shit, the sun, and just gets basically hypnotized and goes into space and becomes one with the universe. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, very, very. I have to go now. My planet needs me. And
Yes.
off in his face, and just the way that scene is like handled is just like, oh wow, this is actually kind of beautiful. And like that is the moment where like the score being what it is works. Because we're having this like this moment of this entity having the the I am everything and nothing simultaneously realization. So it's like, yeah, it's a big moment. And I was, I'm a sucker for as well, like, the bit where the 15 people come back and the mom's reunited with her son and that kind of stuff. That almost, like, I watched the episode twice. The second time was more so mostly on in the background, but I still did kind of, it was still a bit of a gut punch to have that, like, the people come back at the end. So they did something right with that as well. But yeah.
Just as well, you can't say everybody lived, but most people lived.
But yeah, it's it really is the thing where, like, I feel like the major drawback for this is just the fact that Belinda wasn't featured enough as a character. She's there, but it almost feels a bit like Yaz, where Yaz is there, but she's just kind of there to ask the Doctor questions rather than further her character at all. And like, at least with Yaz, the problem was there was too many companions, so she never really got focused much. Belinda's the only one traveling with the Doctor right now, so there's no real excuse.
Yeah.
But yeah, even then, I'd still recommend this.
So I enjoyed